with that, we will just jump right into this. Any other last thoughts there, Sabira?
No, I was going to open for Amanda's. Tell us about...
Open. If you run the
Let's
open,
do
what am I doing here? Yes, you do it. Welcome back, everybody, to Selling Circular. We on this podcast, we're going to continue our learning segments, but I kind of wanted to introduce what our podcast, we're late maybe in this of really what we're trying to be, but we recently had to write a description of what this podcast is aspiring to be. And I actually helped or had help using a little AI, ChatGPT help, which we don't have to talk about that too much. I'm happy to always talk about the help or the lack of help or the future of that. Any thoughts there?
At least it will help the circular economy. It will have a lot of negatives, but I'm happy for that.
I think that's actually a good take, and maybe that's an episode as we can talk about AI and the circular economy. But in this context, I basically started out giving it a prompt that said, I was curious what it was going to say. I was like, hey, we've got a podcast. I'm paraphrasing, but I was like, we got a podcast. It's called Selling Circular, and it aspires to be these types of things. And this is the 5 paragraphs it wrote. I am going to read it all because I think it's interesting.
Wow.
I'll do it quickly.
Okay,
Yeah.
Cool.
Or you can you can exit out at any time. You're like, yeah, we're over it.
I need to exit.
So on the podcast, Selling Circular, Sabira and Garr hope to bring levity and brevity as they explore the intersection. I added levity and brevity, so that's not ChatGPT. As they explore the intersection of commerce and sustainability, helping businesses thrive in the circular economy. Joined by entrepreneurs and industry practitioners, this podcast is your go-to resource for understanding the economic opportunities and challenges of embracing circularity in the marketplace. I actually think that is a good place to end it. It does go on to say that in each episode, or whether you're a startup looking to do XYZ, join us, navigate, tune in, all of that. But it goes, but that's a pretty good summary of what we're trying to be. Actually, I'll read the 3rd paragraph. Whether you're a startup looking to disrupt traditional industries with sustainable solutions or a well-established company seeking to enhance your environmental performance, Selling Circular provides actionable insights and real-world examples to inspire and guide your journey towards circular business models. Yeah, what we aspire to be. That we hope to be bringing more actionable insight. And in doing that, again, Garr Punnett and Sabira Lakhani, we're going to continue our learning models here. We're trying to piece together, and I think this is going to evolve into something more that I will pitch to you later for season 3, which we will do later. Where maybe we can start. Actually, I'll pitch it live. Because I think you'll dig it. Which is
wild.
Start modeling out what we're doing, what we're finding, and a little bit of who we're talking to on maybe a community Miro board. So that we actually have sort of a representative model. Yeah. Which would be kind of fun, I think. And it would give you and I an ability to like have a map a little bit of what we're learning.
A little throwback to the multi-usiverse.
Yes, actually. Yes. A little throwback to the multi-usiverse, the diagram of which spawned a lot of this. Seems positive. You seem like you kind of dig the idea.
I do love, and actually, I mean, it's connected kind of to what I'm going to talk about today and what a thing we talked about earlier, which is that systems thinking.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, we're vibing. We got this.
I like the idea of visualizing how this industry is interconnected. I think it would also be cool to model, like, when you said that, I think of this in 2 ways: modeling, or visually illustrating who people are and what their relation to each other is, and then what their impact on the circular economy is. Where are they playing? If you just keep that static, where are they in the world of circular economy?
I think that's helpful because outside of, I mean, anything that's going to make it a little more tangible, I think helps bring the concepts home,
totally.
As opposed to just living up here in sort of concept,
and they can
ethereal
feel
land.
super theoretical. It can feel like that for sure.
Exactly.
Especially because we're just talking. I try to bring the visuals.
Yes, you do try to. That has been a good push for us. And speaking of, are we bringing some here today? How are we
Yes,
connecting
we
the
are.
dots here on some learning
Yes,
concepts?
exactly. So we're going to layer on top of the systems thinking work
Excellent.
and episode that we did earlier. And today I'm going to talk about industrial ecology, which is systems thinking brought to life in the real world at the industrial level, which is really
Excellent.
cool. And it's one of the like early proven concepts of local circular economy. And I wanted to kind of talk through what are the principles of industrial ecology and industrial symbiosis. It's like bridging some biology with industry, which I love. And then talk about some examples, like there's like one marquee example, and I'll talk a little bit of like the history of it too.
Love it. Bring it on.
All right. So
How far back is this taking us?
A couple of decades. A couple of decades. So this example that I'm going to talk about started kind of like in the late 1950s, early 1960s. So yeah, so but I'm going to first talk about the principles and then we'll go to the example.
Excellent. Good.
Yes. Okay, so somebody in 1992 named Tibbs, must be last name, I'm guessing, identified the principles of industrial ecology to be the following. First is create industrial ecosystems. So this is familiar to us. Close the loop, view waste as a resource, and create partnerships, especially to trade byproducts, right? Use inputs from one process or outputs from one process as inputs to other processes. So that's pretty straightforward if you're familiar with circular economy. Great. Balance industrial inputs and outputs to natural levels. So that's pretty cool. Is manage what how environment and industry interface and making sure that like it's not kind of like crazily imbalanced, and ensuring that you understand the ecosystem reactions, right? So how is nature reacting? How is the industry reacting? And understand the constraints around that. So it's pretty cool because it like brings human activity and like just makes it real when it hits nature, which I think is cool.
I love, we're going to tie this more in together. This has to do a little bit more with our guest today too, which we can sort of weave into this,
Yes.
I think. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Okay, next. Dematerialization of industrial output. So basically like use less stuff. Great. I think like this is also a principle of circular economy. So we're definitely talking major overlap here. And it's basically become more resource efficient, use environmentally friendly materials, do more with less. And this is actually like in line with linear models, but it's more thoughtful because it thinks of outputs as inputs, right? So use less, do more with less is like a fairly linear concept. So hopefully it should be digestible to those folks that are really like, maximize the output. Improve efficiency of industrial processes, pretty straightforward, but that doesn't just mean like keep what you have. It means redesign your products and processes to have the improved efficiency. It's not just take the status quo and make it better. Energy use. So think about the flow of energy. So that's not just materials, but actually energy and energy supplies. And then the last thing, which is like the most interesting, align policies with the concept of industrial ecology. So basically, like now you're bridging human industry, environment, and organizational rules. And it doesn't have to be governmental rules, even organizational rules, to ensure that you're internalizing your negative externalities and that you are leveraging economic principles to get towards that balance that he talks about in the second point, balancing industrial inputs and outputs. So, and then like the in conclusion is use a more comprehensive index to measure a nation's wealth rather than gross national product, which I love. Like, yeah, we can't only measure.
So explain that again to me. Yeah.
That is basically saying we can reimagine how we measure success as a world. Is that we don't just need how much are we producing to measure our success as government and
Yeah.
cultural and
Yeah.
societal countries, that you could use other ways, economic tools, happiness tools, balance, like how balanced are we as a country consuming, so that
I
you can measure our wealth differently.
I I love that. Well, I love that because it so challenges. I love anything that challenge that like kind of makes me pause and go like, "Oh, but we've always it's the easiest way is to measure by GDP." And it's like, probably not. I mean, it's probably there's other ways that we can measure. And I love this idea, and
Yeah.
what's very popular is talking about how circular the world is,
Yeah.
and the Gap report comes out every year and says, "Oh, we are less circular as a global economy." But how do we get to a measure that says, "Hey, we're actually producing more while also circulating more of those resources and materials through the economy?" And I'm
Yep.
not saying that the Gap report is the end all be all, but how do we measure the loop? How
Hmm.
do we measure the efficiency of material
Yeah.
used in our
Yeah.
production?
Yeah. And I don't think we've gotten to a great we've gotten better at measuring like life cycle analyses of
Right,
products and our
right.
processes, but we haven't done a great job of measuring the environmental impact of recirculating, remanufacturing, refurbishing.
Yep,
Like
yep,
what do those processes, they cost something, but they also buy you something. And I think we have a lot
yeah,
of room for improvement in terms of standards and measurement to then that could help kind of measure your wealth essentially.
yeah. And I think the gap in that, not to use more gap language, but the gap in that is we haven't done the best job of socializing the idea of costs, or understanding that um, there are intangible costs that we all
Mm, mm,
socialize,
mm, mm.
that we've just accepted, in the
Yes.
form of emissions or water
Yes.
effluent, or and
Yeah.
so I think that is, once those maybe take a hold more in policy, to your point, that
Yeah.
it becomes easier. Um, well, there we
And
go.
here we go.
And
You
here we
you
go.
you set
Tragedy in
me
the
right
commons.
in
There we
tragedy
go.
of the commons.
Yes.
Social political problem in which each individual is incentivized to act in a way that will ultimately be harmful to all individuals, and those are the externalities. That's what you're talking about.
Yep. Yep.
And a lot of times, I mean, our countries have moved when they've
Yeah.
experienced the pain of externalities, but that's like
Yes.
if they're experiencing a longer term or larger scope. It's like
Yeah.
air pollution, something that we recognize with rain being fairly acid, and okay, let's come together and try to solve that problem. But you don't like PFAS, and there's like momentum around those, but it takes a
Yeah.
while to realize that there's a problem, especially because it's so invisible. Like you can't feel the tragedy really, right? Like
Yeah.
it is of the commons, and
Oh,
it's hard to be aware of it and feel
well,
like you can control or influence it.
I'm not gonna get too out in front of my skis here on saying something like this, but it's the nature of what we study in sustainability circular economy is how are we trying to mitigate those negative effects, those negative
Mm,
externalities.
yeah.
Um, I try to, again, I hope I've read enough. I maybe can add some sources here, and I might go a little bold here. But all of the emissions that get put out into, whether that's PFAS, air quality, water quality, all of that go into our environment and therefore our bodies, the reaction to that is disease,
Hmm. Yeah.
is cancers, or are cancers, are the reaction to that is trying to mitigate that through our healthcare system. And
Hmm.
I don't think we've fully connected all of those dots with what we're putting out into the world versus how our bodies are reacting to it.
Yes.
And we only get that in pieces when we discover the worst parts. We only get that when we discover, turns out lead isn't good for developing brains. Or turns out, and so it's just one of those things where we keep innovating our way toward discovering what our bodies can't accept. And I think plastics, to your point, might be another one of the latest tragedy of commons, where everyone's reeling and going, "Oh, this is massive. This is affecting our population on a global scale."
Yes, yeah. I can go on a little sidebar here, which is I was recently thinking about my dental care, and I have a primary. I'm privileged enough to have primary and secondary insurance, and to get a specific type of treatment authorized was a nightmare. And I came across this New York Times report on how, like in the US, our insurance companies are making in like the 50 to 100 billions of dollars annually, and they are basically forcing doctors to continue to justify treatment to patients. And so just to connect the system dots here, what you're saying, right? We produce, we pollute, and then we deal with the consequences, and we build economic systems around treating the problem that we've created, which still doesn't help people as much as it could, which is like totally bullshit, and I'm really upset about it. Prior authorizations should go away. The end of my sidebar.
Yep. I think that is where we're getting out there in terms of circular economy and connecting some real societal dots here. But I'm comfortable doing that. There's arguments to this. Yeah.
I'm hopping around visually now, but let's get back to industry.
Yes. Before we get too tangent and we just start going down a real yes.
No, we're back. Okay, so this is an image of this eco-industrial park in Kalundborg, which is in Denmark. And this is a very, it looks almost like too pristine. It looks like beautiful, like a beautiful industrial park. I really like it.
It looks like a
rendering.
I just wanted,
yes, it does look like a rendering, but I think it's a real image.
I think it's real. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks real. So I just wanted to show visually like what we're talking about in terms of industrial ecology. This just like looks like any other major industrial park, but this one is different, and we'll talk about that. So this park, as I was saying, started in the late 1950s. So first was a power station, then was an oil company, and then there are other companies that continue to be added in this area. Novo Nordisk starts getting involved. And so the history of this is really that there's two entities in the early 1970s, which is a power station and the plasterboard manufacturing plant and a supply, the oil company, they're supplying gas, right? So there's a pipeline established between these two organizations. And then the municipality started getting involved, and they completed a district heating distribution network. So you see like a small relationship between two organizations starts to get more formalized with some municipal influence. And this is over, this is not like is over almost a decade, right? Two entities are sharing gas, and then it takes some time for the government to get involved, and then you have more and more players, basically to the point now where there is a material exchange of over 30 types of materials. So I'll pull that image up real quick, which is pretty cool because go ahead.
And what I love in that is the heat can be one of those materials.
Yes.
And one of those outcomes that can drive actually value. So go ahead. I take it away.
No, yeah, and this is kind of like a visualization of what this has evolved to be.
I love waste heat. Yes.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yes.
Fly ash, steam, scrubber sludge, fuel gas, waste heat, again, right? Fresh water, treated sludge for fertilizer to neighboring farms. So you can see there's many organizations, right? You have fish farms, greenhouses, the refinery, the power station, the pharmaceutical plant, the lake, right? This is like nature is like, this is that intersection of nature and industry.
And seemingly one of the most important parts of this diagram, and I'm not here to poke holes in it, I would be curious, it might involve more research. Where does things enter or replenish that lake in a healthy way? I see only one. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I see only one direction out of that.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of value in treating the waters, and it's probably used for other purposes in other sort of applications. So
yeah. So this is very cool because you can see over decades these relationships have formed. So this is not necessarily systems planning, it's systems evolution. And that's where like the policy part, which Tibbs is mentioning, comes into play, because that provides the framework or extra boost for organizations to actually get involved. And I'm going to pull up another image really quick, which is after this kind of like marquee or like model industrial eco park became a thing, countries around the globe started being like, hey, let's try this too. And if you look, you see like some in Asia, and actually read that even Korea has been trying some eco parks, but you see also in the Western world, right? Wow. Italy, Sweden, Australia, Netherlands have tried and succeeded a lot, but the USA has tried and failed a lot.
I love that the Netherlands look like, at least on the diagram, they're batting 100%.
Yes,
which
they're killing it.
It's like, all right,
they're killing it.
Yeah, they're killing it. Yeah.
And actually, like the reasons that I read about for this not being successful in the US is because of lack of trust between corporations, right? Because you need still cooperation between potentially competing organizations.
Yeah.
So that's one.
The competition evolving into co-opetition, evolving into cooperation is a tough thing to evolve into.
Yeah.
Especially in systems like ours that are deeply competitive. Yep.
Exactly. That's like a very US culture kind of thing. And then the other was that there wasn't a lot of governmental support to help make these parks possible. And so to me, what that like concludes is that you need the interconnectivity, the willingness between organizations, but also outside parties to help these systems come to life. Like you need the science of it. That's true too. Like there is real science around what can be an output and an input to somebody else, right?
Yes. I think and this kind of gets to the policy framework in ecosystems that drive this type of innovative thinking, which is clearly we can see in the US a lot of attempts, a lot of failures, but that has to probably less do with, I mean, this is what I love and hate about a lot of our system, which is it has to do, there's probably passionate people involved, success. There's probably innovative ideas, success. Company framework and models and policies and enabling factors, both internal policies in a company, but then also in the municipal structure, probably are limiting that growth. And if you look at actually your diagram, what I know about that diagram with Novo Nordisk is Novo Nordisk is quite an innovative company. The world, I think, still world leader in insulin production. And but their model as a company is fascinating. I think they're the world's most, I don't know how to say it because I'll just say that it's the world's best funded nonprofit. So their foundation is actually what owns their corporate structure. So everything feeds up to their foundation, which has a much, much longer time horizon view and public action orientation.
Which circling back to the insurance conversation.
Yeah.
Just that's
Just a
actually
quick
how
touch on
it's
that
done
again.
elsewhere in the world, but not in
Yeah.
the US. Like we are
Yeah.
for-profit insurance
Yeah.
companies, but you can have nonprofit
Yeah.
run and
Yeah.
government run, of course, insurance programs. So
Yes.
anyway, thank you for saying that.
Mm-hmm.
I did not
Thank
know
you
that
for
about
touching
Novo
that.
Nordisk.
We touched the
That's
third
cool.
rail again, and then we can back away. Yes.
I'm just really angry about it.
Me too.
Yeah.
But we're changing. This is what it's about. We're changing the system.
Talk about it. That's all I had. It was a brief ride through what an eco-industrial park could be.
Yes.
And
now we actually get to talk about our guest, and we now are looking at a more modern take of that type of symbiotic movements across industries with Amanda Jordan, who, what I love is she has, as we will talk about, one of the first titles of circular economy project manager for a city/municipality
in the US.
In the US. Good caveat, because there probably are some great titles like that internationally. I first met her in my work with the University, or sorry, not the University of Arizona State. Can't make that mistake. And but we did great work, and she was leading more of the venture sort of work that some of the offices were doing at Arizona State. But this now is very much a look at how is she helping guide Arizona toward their zero waste 2050 goals. And a lot of this is structured in building campuses that are connecting the dots of different companies and what it takes to do that. And so enjoy the conversation with Amanda Jordan. I know we did. It was great to talk to her and for you to get to know her. Yeah. Enjoy, everybody. Thanks for listening.
I'm so excited to chat with you today, Amanda. Tell us about what you're the most excited about in your job, and tell us, what do you do? Who are you?
Yeah. So there's a lot of exciting things happening here in Phoenix. I'll start with, I guess, myself and my role. So I am the Circular Economy Project Manager. I am cross-appointed under Public Works Solid Waste Division and Community and Economic Development. And so my main job purpose is, how do we bring solutions, whether it's through projects or actual business attraction, into Phoenix proper to help Public Works divert waste away from our landfills. I would say there's two big projects happening right now that are the most exciting. I think the first is our circular economy, our circular plastics microfactory, which we just had a grand opening for on February 6th, which is the first of its kind facility, essentially taking the entire plastic supply chain and making it micro scale under one roof. And so looking at how do we collect plastic waste, clean it, flake it, pelletize it, mold it, create products that go back into our local end markets. And it's in collaboration with ASU, Goodwill of Central and Northern Arizona, and Hustle Phoenix, which is a local entrepreneurial development organization here. And so it's super cool. We just did the big ribbon cutting, so we're not making anything yet, but we're very excited to kick things off there. And then additionally, we are working through early negotiations for our Resource Innovation Campus, which is our 40-acre business park, circular economy business park, that will be where these solutions or businesses will locate within Phoenix proper to help us achieve our waste diversion goals. And so I can't reveal any details on that yet, as we are in these early stages, but it's super exciting because the Resource Innovation Campus, or the RIC as I'll probably refer to it, was approved by Phoenix City Council in 2015. So we're finally in the stages to get it going and get it off the ground, which is super exciting. So yeah, I think those are probably my two big projects.
Those are two huge projects.
Yeah.
And also fascinating that, like, approved in 2015. Can you tell us what your hypothesis as to why Phoenix is such a progressive and, I guess,
can I fill in a blank
city?
here, Sabira, just to make sure everyone knows that ASU is number one in innovation in the country.
This is true.
So this is a running joke of those on on campus, though, that it is widespread in terms of how much we laud that. So again, a good indicator again for Phoenix. So
Yeah.
yes, but finish that though in the actual real answer of why this is the perfect environment for innovation within Phoenix.
Yeah. So the city of Phoenix, we are the fifth largest city in the U.S., which I think most people don't realize. We have 1.2 million people in Phoenix proper. In the metro area, it's over, I think it's like 5.5 million. And the really unique thing about us as a city is that we maintain ownership over our facilities. So we own 2 MRFs, 2 transfer stations, 1 compost facility, 5 closed landfills, 1 active landfill. And because of that, we therefore own the waste and the data and can be more innovative and exploratory in ways that other cities can't due to limitations around contracts with waste haulers or just not owning their own facilities. And then, of course, yes, having Arizona State University in our backyard is also tremendously impactful. They are not only #1 in the US for innovation, but they also house the first ever School of Sustainability in the United States. And so it's been really exciting collaborative journey between the city and the university because a lot of what the school was doing around sustainability was happening the same time that we were leaning into circular economy. And so our story around circular economy is very much intertwined between the two entities.
To kind of follow into Sabira's line of question there of I think that was my favorite when I was at ASU and when we met was really hearing. It was actually right about the time that the Resource Innovation Center had just been approved. The unique structure of that approval and where these innovations or initiatives to get placed, and I mean, in this is sometimes the hardest part of who owns it and where is that funding coming from and who's managing it, that most cities don't have, and most cities aren't taking as a priority to house it within specific departments and give it life. You've worked now in many of these different channels. What do you think has allowed that to really come to fruition?
Yeah, so on top of the uniqueness of owning our facilities, the Public Works Solid Waste Division operates under an enterprise model, which means we don't use taxpayer dollars. We use fees from the bill of services for residents, and so that allows us a little more flexibility, so to speak. And I think oftentimes we look at pathways to create unique contracts or agreements in a way that would basically we're offering up essentially a grant fund to a project partner. So in the case of the circular plastics microfactory, that was a intergovernmental agreement that we had reestablished with the division at ASU to pilot this solution. And we gave them funding that is part of the contract, but is represented as grant funding. And so I think because of that other additional layer, we can get a little more creative in terms of financing things.
Yep.
I think also we've seen a tremendous influx of grant funding becoming available in general from the federal government, our state level. Here in Arizona, as you probably can imagine, it's very conservative state, right? And the reason circular economy has done so well here is because we lean into the economic development versus the policy drivers. And so we've seen at the state level, last fiscal year, our Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, our state legislature approved for the first time since 2008, 2009, utilization of the recycling grant fund to go back to recycling grants. And so it's been tremendously impactful. We received I think we received 64 applications requesting upwards of $9 million, and we only have 1.5 to spend. And so the demand is out there, the interest is out there from the business side. And so we're able to lean into different funding mechanisms in a way that we honestly haven't been able to before. So it's kind of a a patchwork approach, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah, it's very unique. I think I take that to so many across the country whenever I speak to kind of one of the best enabling factors when it comes to city-led initiatives, municipally led initiatives, is the ownership stake in outcome and the ownership stake in data,
Mm-hmm.
and how underutilized that is across many municipalities, probably because of how intimidating it is to try to rewrite a little bit of those rules.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we went through a phase where everything was a public utility, publicly owned. I can speak from the experience here in Chicago. It then converted over to be very much industry led and industry
Mm-hmm.
owned, and maintaining that ownership in order to be future thinking and future
Mm-hmm.
proof in that way is so critical. And it's astounding then the leaps and bounds a city can make in trying to not just think about future policy, but also that development, that economic development portion, in ways that the shackles are a little off.
Yeah.
And while there's always funding restrictions, while there's always funding boundaries, that there's a little bit more ability to innovate. Just plainly said.
Definitely, yeah.
I'm curious, can you talk a little bit more about the mechanics of leaning into the economic levers versus sustainability levers or circular economy levers? Like, what does that look like? Are you convincing your congresspeople, your representatives, your local municipal peers and colleagues to change the rules or to
Mm-hmm.
propose policy? Like, paint us a picture of like, how does that actually come to be?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. So when you're looking at the city level, we've been very fortunate in that everything we've done around the circular economy space has been top down led. So starting with former Mayor Greg Stanton, now Congressman Stanton, and our current mayor, Mayor Kate Gallego. And Mayor Gallego was a councilwoman when Stanton was mayor. And so we've had this leader and leadership in place for over a decade now that's been supportive of these transitions, which I think is the hardest kind of foot in the door element. When it comes to the mechanisms outside of the city, you do have to be a little bit more creative in terms of the language and how you're speaking about things, because it is still quite conservative in the higher levels of government here. And so I'll use the example of the DEQ recycling fund. So DEQ has obviously, lobbied the legislature to appropriate these funds into what they're intended for since 2008, 2009. And oftentimes they would...
Can you fill in DEQ for me?
Arizona Department of Environmental Quality.
Excellent.
Sorry.
And then, no, please continue. I know it's just important for the listeners. Yeah. So continue.
A lot of acronyms. So our State Department of Environmental Quality had been lobbying since then to get the funds appropriated, and they'd always get redistributed into other general funds that had a shortfall. And then last year, the DEQ decided to change the approach and reached out to the business community that needs access to different waste stream materials and or solutions to process types of waste, and had them lobby on their behalf. So they set up meetings with legislative members, both state senators and state level House of Representatives. And we put together a one-pager that was titled Economic Development Opportunities. So nothing around sustainability, climate change, circular economy. It was like, the demand is out there. With this much money, you could create this many full-time jobs, this many part-time, this much CapEx, this much investment, et cetera, using all of those traditional economic development metrics. And it worked. And it was a Republican, actually, who introduced it into Senate, Congress, state Congress. I should probably know these official terms, but apologies, it slips my mind now.
The legislative process, yes.
The legislative process, yeah. And so it was supportive and successful. And yeah, they'll be announcing probably fairly soon who's going to be awarded the funding. The only hiccup is that this is a fund that you have to go every year and get that support in. So now we're going through the process of, okay, how do we continue to get this money in? And so I think when you're a more liberal city or government agency in a more larger scale conservative environment, it really comes down to the language and how you're speaking about the benefits of these types of elements. And honestly, it also is about engagement and education. A lot of people sitting at the state level are not engaged into this circular economy work and discussions happening here at the lower level, not lower level, but more localized with cities or universities. And once we go out there and we start to engage our Arizona senators or Arizona representatives, you can see kind of the light bulb moment where they're like, oh, okay, this makes sense now, versus, oh, you're trying to take away business opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. And so, it's as simple as that, but also very complicated when you really get into it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about the progression of you in this as a circular economy expert, especially in the region. I'm even insecure about expert too, of course. So I hope we can all, we're all learners, we're all curious, we're all experts also in this. So, but growing in yourself professionally, I think it's always inspiring as we try to get more people within the tent of the movement that we're trying to build. Talk to us about that journey. Where did it start? Where did it sort of progress in some of the stages of the work you were doing?
Yeah. So, fortunately for me,
because it goes without saying that this is a very unique title that you have.
Yes.
And so it's like, it's very cool that you're in that role. And I think those will happen more. And it's, I think, from people like you that are leading the way. So just wanted to reiterate that to the audience. It's like, that's why this is so massive. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I am the only government person with this title in the state of Arizona. The other person who has a similar title works out of Arizona State University. And then if you zoom out nationwide, there's only maybe 10 of us in a government agency that have circular economy in our title. So it's very, very new. And it is cool because almost daily I see other cities, counties, states starting to put out job postings to hire for a circular economy program manager or administrator. And so I think there's definitely a trend happening there. For me personally, I first really got into this world in my undergraduate studies. So I'm actually trained as a designer. I went to Parsons Design School. And at the time, it was not circular economy, it was cradle to cradle. And so we really studied the front end of the supply chain. How do you design products so that they are properly reused or recycled? It was like the early days of TerraCycle. I remember Tom Zaki coming in and presenting to us, and it was like very kind of bubbling up. And then I really leaned into it during my graduate studies, which I did at Arizona State. I did the Masters of Sustainability Solutions. And I went into that program wanting to focus on governance and policy because, in my experience, at that time, policy was like, if you didn't have the policy, it wasn't going to get done. And I do not feel that way anymore, having lived through my role here at the city. And so I leaned into the governance side of things. And then when I finished my master's, the Risen Incubator program was launching. So Risen, Resource Innovation Solutions Network, was the sister program to the city's Reimagine Phoenix initiative, which at the time was our first ever circular economy program focused on diverting 40% of our waste away from landfill. And as part of that, we launched Risen out of the Walton Sustainability Solutions Service division at ASU, which was more focused on research and applicability. And then there was the business incubator component. And so in that role was the first time I got to take kind of my two worlds and blend them together, working with the entrepreneurs who were very much in the early stages of creating products or services in this space. And this was 2018, and at that time, people weren't still using circular economy language. We would literally have to headhunt entrepreneurs to come into the program and be like, "You're a circular economy solution." They'd be like, "What are you talking about? What is that?" And then fast forward to today, and I think I probably connect with at least 5 different businesses, small, medium enterprises to large scale, who are trying to, utilize our waste stream for R&D or help us divert X, Y, and Z from the waste stream. And so it's been really rapid change. And it's been really cool to kind of live through it from, 2007, 2008, when I'm an undergrad, to today here at City of Phoenix. So yeah, it's been quite the journey.
Well, one of those first companies that we'll have to talk to was Recyclops.
Oh yeah.
And so I need to talk. I need to get Ryan on the phone again.
Yeah, we love Ryan.
Yeah. I think in Sabira, Sabira, I'm formulating a question. Do you have one locked and loaded?
I do.
Okay,
I
go
do.
for it.
And I was curious, Amanda, it sounded like there is an existing ecosystem of waste supply and waste demand that exists in the state, and perhaps y'all as the city have helped facilitate connections to, if that's true, or even if it's not true. Can you tell us a little bit about some success stories of what has worked?
Yeah. So, Recyclops, has been a tremendously successful business that came out of Risen Incubator. And to this day, we still engage with them. We're actually looking at launching a pilot here with them over the summer. More to come on that. I think what's interesting about Phoenix, the metro area, and the state in general is we have this pro-business, right to work kind of legislative mindset. And as such, a lot of major industry is starting to locate here, most specifically semiconductor and electric vehicle. So nearly every EV entity has a headquartered here or a large presence here in the metro region in the last few years. And with these big industries locating, they bring with them all of their supply chain, all of their waste issues, all of these kind of service needs. And so in anticipation of that, we try to be strategic in, from the residential level, what can we help to manage? Because there is a law in place here that Public Works can only pick up waste and recycling from single family residential. However, entities can bring the waste directly to us at our facilities, and we can work with them to process it. Because of that barrier, we also look at how can we be an influencer and supporter in getting these solutions into the market in general, to not only help our residents and our constituents, but our economy and our state and our environmental quality as a whole. And so we engage, putting on my economic development hat, we engage with a lot of entities here. For example, Greater Phoenix Economic Council, or GPEC for short. They are the leading organization conducting business attraction efforts for Metro Phoenix. They have a dedicated director who is working on bringing in solutions that are circular economy oriented, renewable energy. So you're starting to see these different players in the market building out the capacity to bring in these solutions. I think also, which I hate to say, our landfill tipping fees are some of the lowest, same with taxes. So, people can dump waste very cheaply and easily, and we don't necessarily want that. We want to repurpose it, put it back in the economy, and just clean up our air quality and water quality, etc. And so we're very motivated to also bring in those solution providers, so that it doesn't just go back to going into landfill, because it is the easiest, cheapest pathway.
I want to unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
So am I understanding? Yeah, I want to. So does this mean So a great incentive
Mm-hmm.
for businesses is to have those cheaper fees associated with their waste streams.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, what you're saying is that is an option for these businesses, which means businesses are coming, businesses are really owning the fact that, hey, these are our waste streams, but in the environment of which you all creating, I mean, and I should be more specific, in the almost business circular economic environment that you all are trying to support with initiatives, that means that everyone can have very honest conversations about the waste data and then start to be prescribing or working through solutions to address those waste streams. And that in itself is that kind of is a benefit in the way that comes back to Phoenix having the city of Phoenix having a very open relationship because they're co-owning that data and co-owning those results.
Mm-hmm.
That is again a contributing factor in this. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, definitely. And all of us in the waste industry here in the state are all engaged in the same entities,
Right.
workshops, events. So we all know each other, and there's that
Yeah.
relationship that's been built so that there can be a little bit more transparency
Yes.
around what is feasible, what can we do or not. I mean, we have conversations with WM and Republic Services around collaborations for pilots. And so we are open to that. And we hope that those private haulers are also pursuing, more sustainable solutions within the realm of circular economy. And we do try to inform and nudge them and engage them toward that as best we can. Yeah, it's an interesting environment for sure.
What other contributing factors would you say? And maybe I'll be more direct with this. I don't want to be indirect with this. Phoenix has a lot of challenges ahead of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Is that contributing towards an environment of saying, hey, we need to figure out some of these solutions because just like, you all are probably more susceptible than other communities to some of these other challenges, that there's an environment of solutioning that is more open in that way? This is coming from a Midwesterner, so I'm almost prescribing this on you, but that may not be the case. But I'd love your opinion and your take on that.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. So policy is not a lever that we can typically
Right.
rely on.
Yes.
So we have to get creative, and that's why we lean into economic development. However, in the last year, I think last year, the figure is, 60 to 65% of new residents in Phoenix metro area are coming from California. And they're coming from California expecting the same level of services, curbside composting, recycling, etc. And depending on where they're residing in the metro area, they're not going to get access to those services, or at least not in the near term. And so they are pushing back at the government level. We get calls all the time from businesses and restaurants. We want to compost. Why can't we compost? Of course, by law, we cannot service them, so we have to direct them to their service provider. And so it's been really interesting because you see this sort of peer pressure in a way building from all of these new residents coming in. On top of that, we have huge student population with Arizona State. They have 4 campuses across Metro Phoenix, totaling over 100,000 students. And all of those students are sustainability minded and focused. And they're also looking for a lot of these same solutions. And so you're starting to see demand that we now have to meet. And so it's been really interesting because we have this ripple effect benefit of the policies happening in California that we don't have to pass the policy, but we still get the benefits of pushing forward on certain initiatives. I think when you zoom out even further, if you're looking at national, international level, things like the UN Global Plastics Treaty, which will be a legally binding document for the UN members that sign on, is driving a lot of projects and innovation, not only here in Arizona, but across the US. Speaking at the Arizona level and city of Phoenix, because we have ownership over our waste, a lot of private sector companies are now coming in and asking, can you divert and collect film plastic for us so we can use it in our post-consumer recycled content requirements in the state of California and beyond. And so it's just kind of funny because California, it's the third largest economy in the world, and it's having such tremendous impact on its neighboring states and the country as a whole in terms of accelerating this transition. And so, yeah, it's been interesting, and there's a lot more conversations happening at the city, county, state level, nationally, internationally, that are driving forward the circular transition. So it's been really cool to watch.
What I hear out of all of that is constituent support and constituent education, and that feedback loop of people seeking more, and there being limitations policy wise, but that's not going to stop solutions being made. And in a lot of ways, it's what we all are striving for, which is this makes economic sense. And so it's almost being forced to make economic sense and have the reality be new solutions that are going to better the expectations that we have as citizens. So that's cool to hear that these are all in a lot of ways constituent led, of people desiring this. I know where Sabira is going with this. I can, this is where we get to round this out. So take us home, Sabira.
Well, you opened with two new projects that, you opened with two new projects that you're excited about. Tell us a little bit about what the future of Phoenix looks like for you in terms of circular economy, what you're hopeful for, and if you want to even double click on any one of those projects to help kind of paint that picture for us as to what the future could be, that would be really great too.
Yeah. So I'll kick off by quoting Mayor Gallego, and she is very much focused on how do we make Phoenix the most sustainable desert city on the planet, flipping that narrative from when Congressman Stanton had started off, where he had read Bird on Fire, naming Phoenix the least sustainable city in the world back in 2011 when he was voted in. And so under this notion of how do we become the most sustainable desert city, we have to get really creative with our approaches. And that's seen not only internally with cross-departmental collaboration. So my position even existing within multiple departments is demonstrative of that. And we're seeing more and more positions like that here internally in City of Phoenix, where it's water services and streets, or public works and Office of Environmental Programs. There's a lot more blending and removing of silos within the local government, which I think is a huge positive step forward, because so much of this work overlaps and we should all be talking and collaborating. I think from there, seeing, at the state level with Governor Katie Hobbs coming in, she established the first ever Office of Resiliency at the state level. And so you're seeing top-down leadership taking initiative to ensure that our state is resilient from those impending climate change issues that are coming, right? It's hot here. It's only going to get hotter. Today's it's 80 degrees and it's February, which is probably crazy for you guys to hear, because I'm assuming it's much colder than that.
Not that. Yes.
And so I think for Phoenix, what's really exciting is that there is so much openness to trying things out. We will almost always be open to piloting a solution or technology, or jumping into a public-private partnership project to try to problem solve. And it may or may not directly impact us as City of Phoenix, but if it's having a positive impact across the metro region, we benefit from that as well. And so I think for me, what's most exciting is thinking through, how do we bring in these innovative solutions or projects that will not only help us divert waste away from landfill and reduce our GHG emission, but reduce water consumption in certain processes or needs of element of a supply chain? Or how do we improve air quality with a circular economy solution? And how can, this concept of net positive versus net zero, right? That's kind of coming into the sustainability world. And I think Phoenix is going to start to lean into that. How do we do net positive of all of our efforts? And I think because we very much feel the climate change issues much more than others across the U.S. It kind of, I don't want to say like bites us in the butt, but it's pushing us forward. Like it's hot, it's getting hotter.
You're in the hot seat.
We're in the hot seat, yeah. And
yes.
so we're very much accelerating. And how do we figure this all out and do it in a way that is securing a better future for Arizonans, and becoming a more sustainable desert city, and also being a city that others can look to for knowledge exchange, replicability of projects. We're very much open and sharing knowledge and conversing. I think I'm trying to think if there's like a specific project on the horizon that would be super exciting, but I think once we get this campus built, it will really start to move the needle, because we'll have this concrete physical element that people can come and visit, can learn from, can engage with businesses, and then it hopefully will continue to spur innovation and grow from there. So I think I'll stop.
So I'm feeling a selling circular site visit, which
yes.
might happen sooner rather than later, Sabira. But you and I can go down there at some point when that's really built out. We can go get some content there. Amanda, thank you for joining us today. I think this is you're highlighting the importance of both the position and the role you take as a convener and bringing projects together and forwarding those on. And so I'm excited to see what people have to say about this, because I think it's so innovative in the way that you all are approaching it and the work that you all are doing. If you want to catch Amanda coming up, you're actually going to be here in Chicago for Circularity. Yes. So for anybody who's hearing this and is interested in more circular topics, we've got Circularity 24 coming up here in Chicago. I will see you there as well. And so please reach out to Amanda, reach out to us. We can connect you to Amanda. Thank you all for listening. And thank you again for Amanda for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was great.